Dear business partners and friends of SWARCO, dear colleagues, dear stakeholders from wherever you join us from all over the world. I would like to welcome you very much here live from the SWARCO traffic world. Thank you for switching on again the SWARCO Innovation Talk channel. We are here in the headquarters of the SWARCO Group in Wattens in Austria. My name is Richard Neumann and I'm working in the corporate communications department of SWARCO. And it is my pleasure to accompany you through our webinar over the next 60 minutes. This talk is embedded in our novel SWARCO Innovation Hub and takes a little longer than the usual 30 minutes we had in the past. Innovation originates from the dialogue with the stakeholders. This is our credo, and that's why the SWARCO Innovation Hub is a new initiative to foster the ties between corporations, cities, industry associations, academia, and research institutions in shaping together future mobility. Our aim is to create an ecosystem based on learning and interaction among stakeholders that will enable us to address in the best possible way the needs of the user and the community. With today's innovation talk, we would like to venture a look into the nearer future. We don't go until 2050, but we have chosen the topic, how will we get around in 2035? So what will our mobility be like in 14 years from now? I'm pleased that for this interesting topic, experts from Rome, Innsbruck, Geneva, and Berlin have followed our invitation. We will have a short keynote introducing us into the subject of today, and this will be followed by a 40-minute panel discussion, and later on you will have time to ask us questions in a Q&A session for the last 10 minutes. As usual, you can all participate directly in this innovation talk, and you can do that via the chat function which you see in the right-hand part of your screen. Simply send us your questions and comments in the coming minutes, and later on we will address these questions in the Q&A session. You have noticed that in the screen you see also an opinion poll. We would like to know a bit more about your own personal opinion, so please be so kind and answer our question: what will be your favorite mode of transport in 2035? You have several options, and later on at the end of our talk we will show you the result. So who is on board with me here today in the SWARCO traffic world? I'm pleased to welcome here live in the traffic world Professor Dr. Markus Meiler from Innsbruck University. Welcome, Professor Meiler.
Hello, it's a pleasure.
He's the head of Unit of Intelligent Transport System at Innsbruck University. And I also welcome my colleague, Dr. Prof. Stögerer, who is our keynote speaker today, and he's SWARCO's head of technology of the ITS division. Christoph, welcome.
Welcome, Richard. Pleasure being here.
Connected with us via Teams are moreover kind guests from Geneva in Switzerland, and that's Susanna Zammataro. She's the Director General of the International Road Federation. And we welcome from Italy's capital, Rome, Engineer Fabio Nussio. He's the head of Public and International Cooperation Unit of the Rome Mobility Agency, Roma Electro Mobility.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Good morning, it's now from GD.
Welcome, Susanna. Welcome, Fabio. So let's get in medias res. I'm happy to introduce to you now Prof. Stögerer, who runs our Innovation and Technology Department in the ITS division, Intelligent Transport Systems division. Christoph has already been my interview partner in August last year when we dealt with the topic of holistic traffic management for more livable cities and especially our new software, My City. Christoph graduated in business informatics from Vienna's University of Technology. He meanwhile looks back to 18 years of professional experience with a strong focus on technology management. From 2003 to 2013, he held positions within SWARCO Futurit, our traffic light champion in Vienna, among them as the head of R&D. Following an interim employment with Kapsch Trafficom, Christoph rejoined SWARCO in 2016 and has strong ties with our SWARCO Solution Center in Berlin, where we develop software for urban mobility management. Dear Christoph, may I ask you to deliver your introductory note on how you think we will be getting around in 14 years from now?
Happy to do so, Richard. And I think what we all commonly share is this bright vision of the future in mobility that is going to be amazing. And it might include mobility concepts and transportation modes that we still think are science fiction as of today. This might include things like people being capable of traveling to space, air mobility where individuals can travel based on drones, new forms of public transportation, as well as carbon neutral aircrafts. However, this will also include a certain deployment of concepts that we are already well aware of today, including automated, connected, electrified, and shared mobility. That will also include a certain investment that needs to be taken on the mobility side or the fleet side, as well as on the infrastructure side. Another trend that we expect to see is zero carbon emissions ranking higher and higher on our political agenda. We see, for instance, that the European Commission is aiming for 100 cities by 2035 being carbon neutral and already equipped to be automated mobility ready by then, leading to greener, more livable cities for all the people out there. However, painting this bright picture of the future is potentially only applying to a minority of the world population. And looking on the majority, we will still be faced with the mobility challenges that we are already seeing today. So we will see a certain growing population, so up to 8.2 billion people by 2050. We will also see a growing number of cars that are operated out there. So we expect plus 1 billion cars by 2050. And potentially looking on these non-industrialized countries, these might be cars that are still running on combustion engines. And taking those two trends, we expect that more people will be commuting from their home to their workplaces, leading to more congestion, more safety issues, and also more policy constraints. And even though we are looking and are very excited about these future innovative concepts, and we as SWARCO also significantly investing into these fields, we are also well aware about the fact that our current challenges of mobility are here to stay. And we are working hard to improve our solutions so they also help the people out there, our clients, the policymakers, the cities, the traffic operators, to make those people's travel also in future more exciting on the one hand, but also safer, quicker, and more experienced, more environmentally sound. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Christoph, for these enlightening insights in your and SWARCO's view on mobility scenarios in the nearer future. It's an interesting topic. It's difficult to make mobility as smooth as we all want it, I can imagine. But now I would like to integrate our other interview partners into the panel discussion. I would like to start with a person sitting next to me, University Professor, Diplom Engineer, Dr. Markus Meiler. He is Professor for Transport Planning and Traffic Engineering at the Unit of Intelligent Transport Systems at Innsbruck University. After completing his studies in civil engineering with a specialization in transportation at the Vienna University of Technology in 1995, he worked there as scientist in research and teaching at the Institute for Transportation Planning and Traffic Engineering, and received his doctorate in the field of technical sciences in 2002. From 2003 on, he worked for BMW AG in Munich, initially in the Munich Traffic Concept Department. From 2007, he headed the traffic management group at BMW, which also dealt with mobility services. In 2010, he was appointed to the University of Innsbruck, where he is heading the newly established unit of Intelligent Transport Systems, which brings together the former institutes for road construction and transport planning and for railway engineering and public transport, implementing a multimodal approach. The unit forms a competence center for the planning, construction, operation, and management of traffic systems with a focus on the modes of transport: walking, cycling, private vehicle, and public transport on road, rail, and cable car. Professor Meiler, welcome to the SWARCO Traffic World and to our innovation talk.
Thank you.
Professor Meiler, as a researcher and teacher in ITS at university level, you are familiar with the problems linked to organizing sustainable mobility for our future. What is, in your eyes, the biggest challenge we will have to master?
Yeah, we have heard a lot already in the keynote, but of course this transition of the mobility systems, which is necessary to meet the goals that have been set, means a lot of great challenges. So first of all, we have to reduce carbon dioxide emissions and achieve something which is called climate neutrality. So that means that we have to completely switch from fossil fuels, combustion engines, to renewable energies. But at the same time, countries and regions like Tyrol, they also want to combine this with what they call energy autonomy. That means that they cover all the energy that is needed with their own resources. And that means, due to limited resources, we have also to reduce the energy consumption at total. Yeah? So that means even more effort to reach this. And maybe the biggest of all efforts is to make this all in a sustainable way, because that means that we have to cover and balance all these measures with a balance between economical goals and ecological goals, but it's maybe most important on a social dimension. That means that all people still can meet their personal mobility needs. Yeah, so they can access all the functions they need. They can go to work, they can go to school, they can go to shops and have their leisure time activities, and that in an affordable, in a safe way, which is not discriminating parts of the populations or the world, and that makes it maybe even more difficult to reach this. And so it's not only about technologies that can help us to reduce energy consumption and get this shift in the transport system and also in the energy system, but it also needs a lot of really implementation of transportation planning and special planning measures that will also foster mobility on green modes like active mobility, which is also an important part still in the future.
Thank you for this statement. So you mentioned decarbonization, which is one of the big keywords we have to respect. You also mentioned the social dimension of mobility. It must be just, it must be available for everyone, it must be inclusive in the end. So that's interesting insights we have to follow. I would now like to pass the floor to our friend from Geneva, from the International Road Federation. Welcome, Susanna Zammataro. The International Road Federation, IRF, as you might know, is a global independent non-for-profit organization with headquarters in Geneva in Switzerland. It is active since 1948, and the IRF is a membership-based organization. SWARCO, for instance, one of the members, representing leading corporate and institutional players drawn from the road and mobility sectors worldwide. Its mission is to promote the development of roads and road networks that enable access and sustainable mobility for all. Its approach is centered on key strategic components of knowledge transfer and information sharing, connecting people, businesses and organizations, and working with policy and advocacy. In her capacity as Director General, Susanna is responsible for developing and implementing strategic plans for the organization. As in-house expert on environment and climate change, she is also responsible for the overall environmental programs and activities run by the IRF. Susanna represents the IRF in several technical committees relating to sustainability. She's a member of the UNECE Climate Change Expert Group on Adaptation and the accredited IRF representative for the COP negotiations, in between others. Mrs. Zammataro is a member of the advisory board of the FIA, Fédération Internationale d'Automobile, high-level panel on road safety. She's serving since 2012 as the co-chairperson of the Safer Roads and Mobility pillar of the United Nations Road Safety Collaboration Group. So a highly competent person joining our innovation talk today. Susanna, welcome.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for this nice introduction and good morning, everyone.
Susanna, as the Director General of the IRF, your view goes far beyond Europe, in particular also to Africa and the Asia-Pacific region. What is in your eyes the biggest challenge that has to be mastered to make mobility more sustainable and environmentally friendly?
Thank you, Richard. That's $1 million question to respond in a couple of minutes. I would say a brutal short answer to your question is that we really need to learn to do things differently as a sector. Most probably as well, learn to embrace the system thinking, which is something that I'm not personally seeing much doing right now. The previous two speakers just mentioned it. We have fast-growing populations that will lead to significant urbanization, and the demand for new transport infrastructure, of course, is predicted to see massive growth in the coming decades. Christoph, in his introductory talk, was mentioning it, the challenges that we have. Increasing expectations of businesses, service users, and the public. And at the same time, we need to balance that with the need to reduce carbon emissions and waste. And for the road sector, this means really finding innovative ways to fulfill the need of, we come from the infrastructure, of course, perspective. So for us, it's how do we build new roads, maintain and upgrade the existing network, while at the same time align with the actions and the provisions of the Paris Agreement, targeting lower carbon gases and greenhouse gases, and creating a climate resilient infrastructure. From this point of view, we think, at least we believe in IRF, that our our task and collective task as a sector, but as a society, should be really to truly build and create a safe, sustainable, and efficient multimodal transportation systems. And of course, roads are a key part of that, but we need to learn to do things differently. I don't see much this system thinking that is so much needed, and Professor Myler was referring to the difficulty of really managing this difficult transition in between the different transport systems. And we as a sector, as a road industry, compared to other industry, I must say, we have not really fully embraced the power of technology. I think Professor Myler was saying technology will not solve everything, but in a sector, in a traditional sector like ours, like roads and infrastructure, definitely digitalization and technology will be a significant game changer in that respect. We have an infrastructure that is not only aging, but our own approach to planning, designing, and building infrastructure is really rapidly becoming out of date. We have trillions of investments now lined up, especially with the new recovery packages that are in place, and we really need to do start doing things differently and think differently. And I hope we'll be able to come back to that and talk a little bit about the changing behaviors and that how do we manage that difficult transition that Professor Myler was referring to.
Fine, Susanna. You mentioned multimodality as a key word. You mentioned that aging not only of the infrastructure, but also of the people who are participating in traffic can be a problem. And I know that the IRF is very strong also in the education of people in terms of road safety in the end. Maybe you can relate to that later on a bit also.
With pleasure.
Last but not least, we would like to switch the line to Rome, to Engineer Fabio Nussio. He has a technical background and more than 35 years of experience gained in Rome Municipality Group, private companies, and in Finmeccanica Group, working also in projects across the world, mainly in Eastern countries, Russia, and China. He is the head of the Public and International Cooperation Unit of the Rome Mobility Agency, and according to a specific service level agreement between the Mobility Agency and the city, he is taking care of fundraising activities and international cooperation for mobility projects of Rome Municipality. Representing also the city in many international associations like Polis, C40 Group, and Impacts. Fabio Nussio is also supporting the city of Rome in the financial implementation of projects funded by a Sustainable Mobility Program of the Ministry of Environment and from the Infrastructure Program for Urban Mobility of the Ministry of Transport, as well as by EU ERDF programs for mobility. He was also the technical responsible for the design of the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan for the city of Rome, adopted by the Rome Municipal Assembly in August 2019. The plan includes complex financial schemes to guarantee implementation of sustainable and climate-neutral approach of the city. Benvenuto, Fabio.
Thanks a lot for nice presentation. Absolutely too much for me.
So I want that our audience knows a bit more about our speakers here. So, Fabio, you are based in the Eternal City with its 3 million inhabitants, a dense network of streets and roads, intense tourism, and a lot of historical buildings. What is, in your eyes, the biggest challenge to master to make mobility more sustainable and environmentally friendly?
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I think that you gave to me a very hard task, because to modernize this historical eternal city is quite a very challenging task. Rome is the capital of Italy, and the Lazio region is one of the largest cities with 1,300 square kilometers, and is the fourth largest city in the European Union. The fact is that in 2019, when we approved the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, 63% of inhabitants travel by private vehicle or scooters, and only 37% were using public transport, bike or feet. This is creating the opposite we are asking for, so a negative impact of pollution, congestion. So the biggest challenge of the city administration is to rebalance the modal share in favor of multimodality. So first main word is multimodality, supporting the growth of collective transport and sustainable modes, cycling, sharing, electric modes. For this reason, the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan was adopted in August 2019, as you said before, and has to be definitively approved this July, this month of July, that's open just today. So that is based because you have to know that in Italy, the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan are compulsory for cities larger than 100,000 inhabitants. So this should be a medium-term operative plan for the next 10 years and looking beyond. In fact, we have a trend vision, also going towards 2040. And this should be able to increase public transport, collective model, multimodality with the implementation of smart technologies and intelligent transportation system. We gave a strong role, and we are giving a lot of inputs to ITS, in particular technologies, because we believe that digitalized and decarbonization are the word that together multimodal should be applied in the next 10 years, 10, 15 years in the city if we want to modernize the city. So guarantee to all the cities transport option, to improve safety conditions, to reduce air noise pollution, and increase the efficiency of transport flows of people and goods. And we already carried out the Rome city zoning. We are dividing the city of Rome in 6 areas with the increasing constraints to private mobility. These are supported by ITS measure. If you want to access to inner zones, the city center, you need to have a permit. You are controlled by electronic gates. And we are now applying to the external zone called the rail ring, another system of electronic gates and control of flow in order to permit that all vehicles will be subject to pollution charging in the future. So the internal zone of the city of Rome that are representing about 700,000 inhabitants and 40% of the total flows will be strictly controlled, and where the private modes will be limited. But I will deal probably later on what is happening after the lockdown, how this vision was modified from the lockdown and after COVID recovery. Thanks a lot for the moment.
Thank you, Fabio. So you mentioned also multimodality as a clue for traffic in Rome. You talk about the pollution charging, which is a very interesting but also at the same time critical topic. There are means to handle the mobility of the future also in a financial way, maybe. Let me continue with a question to Professor Meiler. Who or what has the greatest potential to influence traffic and traveling for the better, in your eyes?
So I think the biggest pressure will come from the climate crisis. So if you see the COVID crisis at the moment, there was the first priority to secure health, and our government said we will do whatever it takes to secure this. And if we see this in the same intensity for the climate crisis, there has to be done a lot. And I think, of course, we have to change behavior of the people. And that is a very difficult task. It not only needs that we raise awareness and motivation of the people, but we also have to really invest in infrastructure and services for alternatives of traveling. And as we said or heard already, there are a lot of technologies that will help us, and we will need them. So if we want to shift from the fossil age to a post-fossil age and renewable energy, we will need e-mobility. And to make traffic more efficient, we will need traffic management and mobility services. And digitalization will help us to make public transport part of a mobility as a service concept, and the biggest and strongest part in it. And that is a key element. And we see that ICT can help us. We have seen this in the COVID crisis already, that ICT can help to change mobility. But we have also seen that it is very important to have livable neighborhoods and good city structures to be also resilient for these crises. And so I think we will also see that there is a path leading to more active mobility, and some cities go this path already.
So you mentioned behavior, change of behavior. That's an individual thing everybody of us can do. And you also mentioned the frameworks. We need to have infrastructure frameworks, technological, political frameworks, financial frameworks to make a change in mobility. Christoph, how do you see this question of the influence of traffic and traveling for the better? Where is the greatest potential in your eyes?
So I think the greatest potential to influence travelers is coming, first of all, from policy making. To say it's a political or a topic on the political agenda, to say what I am allowing for traveling, what I'm incentivizing, and what is going to be made more expensive. And also Fabio made the point earlier saying there are already different zones, how they allow traffic happening in the city center of Rome, just to give an example here. And the second lever, as I see, is on the attractiveness of the transport mode itself. So the more attractive you make micromobility, the more attractive you make public transport, the more people will do this model shift from individual transport using their cars towards using a more attractive alternative.
Fine. Susanna, how do you see this question of the greatest potential to influence traffic and traveling for the better? Where is it the greatest potential in your eyes?
Well, to add to what the Professor Mahler and Christoph has just said, the answer is also a fundamental element is digitalization. Increasing digitalization of mobility really presents us with an opportunity to accelerate that transition towards sustainable and urban mobility. Of course, we look at digitalization in many different dimensions. There's been a lot of attention to digitalization more applied to vehicles, and a little bit now on how digitalization can serve what Christoph was just mentioning. How do we make transport more attractive, certain type of transport modes more attractive for users? There's another part of digitalization applied again to what is more the core of IRF infrastructure, which has still its potential is totally untapped for the moment. For us, big data, cloud computing, analytics, being applied now to infrastructure will be a really game changer for our industry. The arrival on new technologies is enabling already, we see it, efficiency improvements in the existing transport systems, and as well they make them more attractive, as Christoph was saying, user-friendly and sustainable. There's another fundamental point we've not much talked about right now, and I think Professor Mahler touched upon it at the beginning, that transition, but the integration across transport networks and modes, which is driven by growing ability for us to make real-time system data and information available both to operators and users. And it's something on which IRF has been doing quite a bit of work in the framework of the Sustainable Mobility for All, an initiative that brings around the table 55 transport organizations. We just deliver a report that provides some recommendations on policy making for data sharing. I agree with Christoph as well. the importance of having policy and regulatory systems in place will be crucial. So I'd like to invite everyone as well to take a look at this report, Policy Making for Data Sharing, that we've just produced with a number of case studies of, the value that data sharing can bring to this transformation of the sector.
Fabio, what would you like to comment on this question?
But as you know, when you speak for the last one, something you could repeat. But in my opinion, what I can say is clearly digitalization is fundamental. But another thing that was not said, we tested during the lockdown, was that the strong increase of smart working, different timing of the city that can be applied. So also the changing of timing of the city and the new use of smart working, the involvement of mobility managers or company mobility managers, that could be a very important issue that can be taken into account. Other things that, in my opinion, should be considered is that the integration, a better integration. Already said mobility as a service, that was very important in the future. And also, in my opinion, what is important is the revision of the ITS directive that should promote a better sharing, data sharing from city to operators and to citizens. So the availability of data in the ways better availability of data and quality of data that can be from transport can guarantee better integration and better multimodality for all, and real accessibility to all transport modes, including micromobility, sharing, and so on. So this could be supporting also the problem of PT fear that was clear after the COVID, and reduce the return to private car that was experienced in the first time after COVID. So that could be what I can say is, again, digitalization, and climate neutral. We have to take into account, when we think to digitalization, we have to take in account the climate neutrality that we need. Also, the mission that was launched by the European Commission goes towards these objectives. So I think that these are the main challenges and the main potential to influence traffic and traveling for the better in the next 10 years.
Thank you. We all know that sustainability is one of the big buzzwords of our time. Susanna, if I may ask you, electromobility is often considered as a major problem solver to make traveling more sustainable. Do you agree?
Electric mobility is an essential component of a broader transformation of the transport sector, but I think we need to say it loud and clear that e-mobility is more than just the electric car. And so simply replacing the current internal combustion engine cars with electric cars will not allow us to meet the climate targets, nor address the pressing problems like congestion, safety, and affordability we were talking about. So transforming mobility requires a balanced use of that avoid shift, improve type of strategy. So the change of behavior we were mentioning right at the beginning of this exchange. And policy is important. It must combine electrification of the existing fleet, but with the greening of the grid, of course, and promoting that model shift. When I'm talking about avoid, shift and improve, I'm referring to avoid or reduce the travel or the need to travel, the shift to more energy efficient modes, and improve the efficiency through vehicle technology, for example. I want to mention as well, I see the clock is ticking. We just released again under the Zammataro initiative another interesting paper just 2 weeks ago, mapping out electric mobility and this transformation. And I think it's extremely important when we talk about electrification, electric mobility, that we take into account the differences that exist between the north and the south of the world. priorities are different. It was mentioned at the beginning that we have different priorities. So trying to replicate in the south that shift from, electric passenger vehicles might not be the right option. In certain countries, it's clear that electrifying 2 or 3 wheelers would be much more beneficial, for example. I'll stop here.
Yeah, we in fact have to look a bit at the timing of our conference. I still have a lot of questions, but I won't make them all, but that's no problem. It's the quality of the answers that's interesting for us. Professor Meiler, next question to you. Will all combustion engines be replaced by cleaner technologies in 2035?
So that is very ambitious. So if we want to meet our targets in Austria in 2040 and 2050, that would mean that all combustion engine would have been to be replaced by 2030. So that would be no combustion engine be newly registered, no car in 2030. And I don't think that this will go so quickly. I think a couple of weeks ago, Audi announced that they will shift to completely electric fleets in 2035. And that sounded very, very ambitious already. And if we talk about trucks, it becomes even more tricky. So I think the answer is no. But one thing I would like to add, because there's the chance of digitalization, of course it is, and it is a very important thing to digitalize and virtualize our mobility, but we should not forget that it also needs a lot of energy in the background. Yeah? That is also a topic that we have to address.
Energy in the form of electricity.
Electricity, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Christoph, any opinion on the electromobility question?
So I think the whole network at the end of the day is key. The more the fleet is growing, the more it's also about how do I make sure that we can charge those vehicles at the end of the day. Because usually people will try to charge their vehicle around the same time. And so also making use of this infrastructure will be a key element here, as I see it.
Yeah. Fabio, to what degree has e-mobility already been adopted in the city of Rome?
But in Rome, we approved. We are now implementing the electric mobility plan for the city. We draw up a first draft of the Rome plan for public recharge, based on the fact that we consider that in 2022 we should have a 10% of number fast recharging point, about 10% of the circulating vehicles. But at the moment, we already installed 250 units, and we have already planned up to 700 charging stations. Integrated partly from fast recharge station in the main axis. So the fact is that we consider that the public sector should be integrated by the private. So we are giving the floor to people to work together with us in order that we consider that e-mobility can be an option. Also, we launched the Grand Prix of electric Grand Prix in Rome for 3 years on the city track, the out city track, and it is very successful. We jumped last year for the lockdown, but this year was again applied, and I think that this experience continues. Anyway, I think that e-mobility should will have a problem in order to become a mass product. I don't know. This is my concern at the moment. We are following, and we are going in order to maintain the link with the whole producers, the automotive corporation, and energy. So this is my first question. My first answer.
Thank you. I mentioned that our innovation talk here is part of an initiative within the SWARCO Innovation Hub. And one of the other initiatives is our so-called Lighthouse program. I would like to hint you at this, our audience, especially the cities. Maybe you have heard phrases like existing solutions usually do not perfectly fit my actual needs. It is hard to keep up to date with the technology evolution. We often lack the resources, whether it's time, travel, know-how, to remain well informed about innovations. We have almost no budget for trial and error experiments. So if you recognize yourself in such statement, then it could be an option to become part of SWARCO's Lighthouse program. This offers you a unique, free of charge opportunity to strengthen your bonding with SWARCO. You will have a head start in innovative developments in our group. You will benefit from exposure in the innovation community, network with other stakeholders, be an early tester of practical prototypes, and you can become a co-creator of innovative solutions that already fit your needs in shaping modern mobility. So it's about learning, discussing, trying, and co-creating. Maybe you would like to be one of our next interview partners here in the SWARCO Traffic World. Maybe you would like to listen to quarterly panel discussions on trends and topics. You would like to try out hard and software as a collaborative customer, or you would like to become a co-creator, tackling daily pain points of cities. So if this is interesting for you, please have a look at the Lighthouse landing page on the SWARCO website, or send us a mail to innovation.hub@swarco.com. Swarco.com. Professor Meiler, another interesting topic is the self-driving car. A lot of research and testing is so-called automated or autonomous mobility. What are the chances that we really make the big step from driving to fully automated?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if automated driving means that the car can go without driver everywhere, at every time, in all traffic and weather conditions, I think that is a very, very big step, which is still far away. But of course, we see highly assisted driving already in particular situations. So especially where the complexity is low or the speed is low. So that works already. And it is not all about technical and technological issues. There are also legal issues and others. So if they are solved, I think we can see autonomous driving in very specific situations and locations, like parking lots or so on, very, very soon, rather soon. But the big step is, I think, far away.
Christoph, how do you see that? CCAM, Connected Cooperative Automated Mobility, is an important topic in our R&D activities. Can you relate a bit what is happening in this respect at SWARCO?
So we actually see CCAM as a key technology for our future, because it's actually achieving two things. One is it's extending the sight or the visibility of the infrastructure on the one hand. So we get better visibility on where are the cars, with which speed are they driving, what is the saturation of the network. So this helps us also at the intersection as well as at the central system in order to make better decisions. But it's also a technology that helps us, on the other hand, closing the control loop towards the individual car. So we gain the capability to communicate into the car about, for instance, hazardous situations, about a guidance, how it could be best routed throughout the network. So for us as an infrastructure and a traffic management company, it has a great potential, and therefore we are also in this in the different research projects from the very early stages to what we are doing in the course of our strategic programs today.
Fine. Fabio, what's your opinion? Can you imagine automated driving in a city like Rome?
I have to say that we tried some years ago to be an early adopter within the EU research project. I have to say that legal transport and policy impacts of automated transport as well as public acceptance created concerns, and we postponed the application in such complex environment. There is a need of structured dialogue, in my opinion, between transport authorities, industry and service providers on various issues related to the view the development, to CCAM development, including the issue of data sharing and governance. Also, GDPR is still a problem. Anyway, Rome is considering self-driving shuttle tests on short stretches in the urban area. For instance, last mile in suburbs already served by the metro. For instance, we were taking to Eur district, and the future extension to last mile service in other suburbs in case of high-speed, high-capacity radio circumferential corridors. Also for plateaus of high-capacity automated vehicles. We were thinking also to live in lab in a urban setting in order to how can say, to consolidate the use cases and in cooperation with the OEMs based on existing road infrastructure, made cooperative or using standard technologies. So, in other words, we are very open. We are very open to the CCAM because we consider part of the this experience as part of the future. This implementation are part of the future mobility. Absolutely. Thank you.
Susanna, what would you like to add to the self-driving car topic?
That well, connected autonomous vehicle is progressing, but there's a bit of disconnect or different speed when it comes to vehicles and infrastructure. There's been a lot of attention around the vehicle per se, and little about the infrastructure in which those vehicles need to operate, and that's a gap that we are trying to fill as a federation. We just launched last year, I think, a dedicated connected and autonomous mobility committee, trying to bring around the table the entire ecosystem in collaboration with the European tollway operators, for example, or the European Road Federation. Asked also from the US, colleagues from China and Australia as well, to look at specifically three things as well: regulatory frameworks, the future workforce as well. We always tend to forget about the people and the skills of people that we will need to embrace this transformation. And the third part is about the technological innovations. You will find all that in a manifesto that the committee has already published in March. And I want to invite everyone as well who's watching us today to take a look at the EU-funded SHOW project. It's a tremendous consortium of which SWARCO is also part. 69, I think, partners, really the entire ecosystem, and we are trying really with this project to bridge the gap in between the talking and the action with a series of interesting pilots.
Fine, thank you very much, Susanna. Time has progressed already. That's why I would like to continue with the chat questions the audience sent us. I have here a question directed to Professor Meiler. What is your opinion? How do you see the change in thinking regarding the transition in the approach for the accessibility of individual mobility can be organized, managed, educated beside technical and social innovation? Very complicated question. So the transition approach for the accessibility of individual mobility, organized in a social, managed, and educated manner.
So as I said already, it's very important to have this transition. And of course, it is right that we need a completely shift of thinking as well. But actually, I think it needs different ways to achieve it, because it's not only the thinking of the people and the awareness of the people and the motivation of the people to change their behavior, but it also needs a shift in the thinking of policy, because they have to set the framework, as Christoph said already, so that people also will find the chances to do and change their behavior. So we will also have to invest in infrastructure to make some systems more attractive, and in the typical way of push and pull strategies, we will also have some kind of restrictions which are always also needed to change behavior. Otherwise, it won't work.
Another question from a guest in our round here. There seems to be a large gap between how efficient cities operate around the world. Should the future mobility challenge be a collaborative global initiative? Who would like to take that question? So the large gap between how efficient cities...
I can take that if you want, Richard. It's clear. It was in between the lines of everything we have just said. Everything that we have just mentioned this morning, each of the panel colleagues and myself as well, cannot be achieved by one single actor. So partnerships will be at the core of everything that we will do. And there are different types of partnerships right now taking shape. There are partnerships at policy level, like the Sum for All. There are partnerships within the industry with organizations like the IRF. There are even business-to-business type of partnerships and dialogues taking place right now. If I can maybe abuse the floor one more second to respond as well to the question was mentioned before. For me, the future is really, how do we do that? We need to learn to put people back at the center, which is exactly what we have not been doing so far. We build stuff and then we try to convince people to use it. Now we need to go the other way around. People at the center. We need to build solutions around the people, which means for the future and especially for the south of the world, providing access and quality of life to people. If we are able to respond to these two needs, access and quality of life, quality of services, then the transformation will come automatically. And it doesn't mean we have to fight cars or that the cities like Rome have to really start a war against cars. It means really decentralize and add more options for cycling, walking, and micromobility, for example, to provide that access.
Absolutely.
I would completely agree. The only thing is that we have to be very conscious how we define access. Because in the past, access was always related to high speed, to cover long distances in short time. Now I think it is important to have access also in the direct living circumstances. So that is the only way that we really shift to also active modes. And access can be on the very technology and very high speed, but it can also be very low speed and in your neighborhood, and that is completely different. So access has to be defined in the right way, I think.
Yeah. How do we tackle the diverse demographic growth with future mobility strategy? So demographics is an important issue. The population is moving into the cities more and more. The population is growing and traffic will be more dense even in the future. How do we tackle that? Fabio, would you like to answer?
Okay. Sorry. First of all, I have to say that what Susanna said before is absolutely fully to be agreed, because we need absolutely cooperation, and in particular also in the demographic change. If you want to change, to make more sustainable our city, we need absolutely to take into account that growing people need absolutely an accessible city, and we need absolutely that we create technology options that are easily understandable from people that is growing, so probably with more difficulties than the younger people. So we need absolutely to change to have a cooperative approach to plan for people, as we say for SAMP. The definition of the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan is plan for people. That means that we have to think a city that improve the place where it's easy to live, is pleasant to live also. And we have to consider that we are dealing with the growing people. So this was neglected in Rome until 15 years ago. Now we have to imagine a city where the city can be lived in 50 minutes. This is 50 minutes concept, as you know, Paris already applied, but not only Paris. When we deal, this is important, the cooperation also between among cities. we meet regularly. We meet now online regularly, but before was face to face. And I have to say that this is the most important thing that we have to do. I come from the relation world, but I was in charge to create the new sustainable urban mobility plan. That is a change of mentality also in the southern regions, that Rome is the capital of southern in some way. And this is very important in my opinion, because this approaching a change of mentality that I hope can continue and can increase in the future. This is my things.
So the message is plan the city around the people and not around the vehicles. Yeah, that's
Yes.
something. The last question I would like to take here, because we are already running out of time, but you have the possibility to send us further questions also to our email address, innovationtalks@swarco.com, innovationtalks@swarco.com, and there you can get answers on your specific question. There seems to be a question coming from Africa directly addressed to Susanna, which has to do with the funding. What is your strategy as an organization for Africa, given the scarcity of funds for road infrastructure and multimodal transportation infrastructure and technology? So what do you answer?
Richard, I think you froze for me, so I missed part of the question. I heard that it's about Africa and access to funding.
Yeah. So it's what is your strategy as an organization, IRF organization, for Africa, given the scarcity of fund for road infrastructure and multimodal transportation infrastructure? So how can we help Africa in having more funds, in having a better infrastructure?
Well, first of all, as well, by creating the skills. We tend to forget the people. We can have the best policies, systems, and technologies in place. So if we don't have skilled people who are able to understand the type of thinking we were outlining here today, we won't be able to go far. So as a federation, we invest tremendously on capacity building on all fronts. And the second point is really creating opportunities for those countries to connect, and to forge partnerships to deliver, because funding exists actually. It's sometimes the access to this information is not always easy, and that's what we create as an organization. Try to make sure that the knowledge and the expertise circulates, the information circulates, and we connect these people to those opportunities.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I still owe you the results of the opinion poll we placed on the chat site. How will we get around in 2035? The number one answer by most of the people was the mix of the above. So a mix of all modes of transport will be most likely the modes we will be using. Number two was the e-car, and number three was walking. So the micro-mobility topics like walking, like taking an e-scooter, use the bicycle and so on, is important and will grow. I'm completely convinced on that. So, dear business partners, if we have a look at the clock, time is already over. So I would like to thank all listeners to our innovation talk for participating in this 7th edition of the talk. My heartfelt thanks goes, of course, to Susanna Zammataro from the IRF, to Fabio Nussio from Rome, to Professor Meiler from the University of Innsbruck, and to our keynote speaker, Prof. Stögerer. As always, my thanks also goes to the important people behind the scenes, to Christoph Wachsmacher and Benjamin Steiner, who look after the technical implementation of our talks. We hope you enjoyed our talk and gained some interesting insights into the scenarios of mobility in the year 2035. We will be happy to answer more questions we were not able to address due to time constraints if you send us an email to innovationtalks@swarco.com, innovationtalks@swarco.com. Our Innovation Talk series will, of course, go on, and we hope that you will be joining us next time again. Please visit our website to not only learn about the topic of our next talk, but also to learn about SWARCO's solutions and offerings in the field of urban mobility management. As always, you will find the recording of this webinar on our website. The possibility to watch previous talks you might have missed. We look forward to the exhibit in Hamburg in October, 15th of October, we can meet in person again in October. In the meantime, all the best, stay healthy, and goodbye.